So Kalista, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about like your story and your journey at Beyond the Mind. Like it's so important to us to make sure that every individual is seen and understood and, really has agency and the best opportunities to reach their own potential. And I feel like your story is one that, I know from the research I've done that so many people will be able to relate to. And, hopefully for those who might find some commonality from your story and their experiences might lead to them just getting a chance to get a better understanding of themselves. And, some of that understanding can lead to like tools, resources, just support, as they continue life. And so I'm gonna have you introduce yourself, but I'll just say like I got to hear your story because we're in the same ADHD coaching group. I have ADHD, and we've met up before in person for in-person meetings, and it was just such a delight to hear your story, especially because I think in some ways it follows some common patterns that we see, but it also breaks stigmas in different ways of what these like hidden struggles can look like. So yeah, if you could just like introduce yourself, just tell the audience a little bit about you, and then we'll just continue on talking about your early memories of struggling in school. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for having me. I loved our previous conversations on ADHD and motherhood and the whole school system and everything. And so I'm happy to come on and talk a little bit more about my experience because I always want to share anything that could, be helpful to anyone else or interesting or help them understand themselves and kind of what to do moving forward. So yeah, my name is Kalista. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. I had her kind of during COVID, in between breaks in my education, and I'm currently going back to school, back to community college to finish the prerequisites to major in biology. A little bit more about like my educational background. I started having some issues in school when I was younger, around like middle school age. And so I ended up transferring to a charter school, an online school. And then I tested out of high school when I was 13 and started community college. Finished my AA degree, but then it's just been a little all over the place.
Oh my gosh. Actually, I don't think
Yeah.
I got that piece from our last call. You tested out of high school at 13?
Yeah, so I took something called the California High School Proficiency Exam, which allows you to, it's basically the equivalent of a high school diploma, like a GED, but it's only valid in California. And so you can take it either at, I think, 16 years of age or after one semester of 10th grade, whichever comes first. And so through some of my previous schooling with like the online school, I was able to skip a grade. And so that's how I was able to take it when I was a little bit younger.
Wow. Okay, so we were just talking about how you started noticing some of your struggles, around this time frame though. You were like you said 12 or 13, and it sounds like those led to at least having good conversations with your family. I'm super curious, like when I hear you talking about your, I guess, awareness of it, and you just seem to have a lot more awareness than I think I had at 12 or 13. That yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how did you know that this, like what you were experiencing wasn't what everybody was experiencing, or did it even matter? Like, how
I
did
don't
you
know.
not just think this just normal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really mattered to me. I think what was different, I mean, I knew that my struggles like with school weren't because I was unmotivated, even though that's what I think it might have looked like or appeared like. Like I knew that there was something just with how the system was structured, that was just like not aligned. I guess with the way my brain worked, even though I wouldn't have like phrased it then that way then. And then I was just, I think, able to make those changes earlier on because like, yeah, even though my family like didn't know like what was going on exactly, like my mom especially was like very supportive and just figuring out like what would work for me. And so her and I were both kind of researching like, okay, what are other options? Um, and that led to, yeah, her pulling me out of just my regular junior high and transferring me first to the charter school, then the online school, and then finally figuring out how I could test out. Because it was like, okay, we just knew like I was not going to make it through, you know, several more years of the public school system. But I knew I wanted to continue all of my education and like do something. So it was like trying to figure out like, okay, how can we make this happen?
Yeah, so I'm curious, what was your experience at the charter school? Because most charter schools that I researched when my kids were younger, it seemed to me like they had a lot more of like a hands-on, what is it, like kinesthetic learning type approach, like you learn as you're doing. So I guess, yeah, what was your experience of it?
Yeah, so this one, it was called the Circle of Independent Learning in Fremont, California. I'm not sure what they're currently doing. And so the structure was like a little bit different. So you could meet with a teacher like once every week or two. And you could kind of choose your own curriculum, choose some of your own classes, and take it home to work on it at home. And then you'd come back to go over what you've done. I'm sure still doing some standardized testing and everything. And they, I think, had some other extracurriculars and like classes and things you can enroll in, but I mostly just did my work on my own, and then came and met with the teachers every couple of weeks.
Okay,
Mhm.
interesting. Um, so it wasn't a big social environment then, like you weren't surrounded by a lot of kids your age, it sounds like, even though it was a charter school program.
No, I mean there were definitely like some more opportunities for that if you wanted to, but it wasn't like a daily thing. And like the couple of times like my mom and I like went to these events, I was kind of like, okay, like nothing wrong. I mean, it probably would have been good for me to get some more social interaction, but it just didn't really feel like an environment I'd kind of fit in with. So I just kind of did my work and that was it.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that kind of answers a question that was in my head of like later on, how did you feel comfortable giving up the social environment to finish school early? But you said from the charter school, you then went to an online school, and
Mhm.
did you just find something else that was a better fit?
Yeah, so I think there was a little bit of a consistent pattern of me kind of initially being more excited and motivated by you know, the new program, the new teacher, the new curriculum, and really getting ahead. And then as time kind of went on, just being less interested in that. I also definitely got frustrated because I went through like all the junior high and then like sort of ninth grade curriculum really quickly. And I also tested, they do some placement testing for like math and English. And I think I tested into like 10th grade math and then like post high school for English. And the teacher kind of joked like, oh, haha, well, just because you did that doesn't mean that like you can just skip to that grade, like skip to college. And I kind of remember thinking like, well, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why can't I do that? And so it got to the point where I was doing high school level curriculum, but I was not going to get credit for that. I was still like enrolled in seventh grade.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm kind of picturing you like just kind of sitting down, doing your work, and not struggling while you're actually doing the schoolwork. But am I wrong there? Like what was it? Was it a struggle when you just like tried to focus and sit and do your work?
Not
Or
not at that point in time. No, the level of schoolwork I was at, like if once I actually sat down and did everything, I was able to get through it on my own
Okay.
pretty easily. Prior to that, in the public school, I was at the point where we had Common Core math, which I've seen different varieties of. Whatever I switched to later on was fine. But the version they had at just my standard public school, it was just a very odd curriculum. And so at that point, I was failing math, which that had never happened to me before. And so that was also a big push to kind of find something different, because I was like, it's not normal for me. Like, I'm having such a hard time with math. And then once I switched to the charter school where I was able to do a different curriculum, then I was able to get through middle school math and then get through algebra totally fine.
Okay. Broader than the studying, like what were there struggles? What was there something that kind of was standing out to you now that I'm like, that you're like, oh, these were missed signs that I don't know, just was different, or, didn't, I don't know, something that just made you, was there anything that stood out when you look back now that now you can see it was like, oh yeah, that was my ADHD. That was because of my ADHD.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just those persistent feelings of like not ever quite being able to accomplish as much as I knew that I was capable of.
Yeah.
As much as everyone that knew me kind of knew I was capable of. So then you kind of go down that route of like, oh, well, am I just lazy, or do I just need to try harder? Or like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And then also definitely that like initial excitement of like, okay, changing schools, changing curriculums, and having that really like high initial motivation, but then that kind of weaning off as time went on. And yeah.
Well, I just could really relate to that, like this surge of like excitement and drive, and then something meeting your potential, but I think not quite knowing where it falls off, and I'm sure there's so many factors for that, but like, at least in my life, like now I know like I have to find ways to add variety and excitement and things into sometimes somebody else's curriculum, because it like the excitement doesn't hold, it's like the excitement doesn't hold up, and then it's hard to engage if you're like, well,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And knowing what I know now, and I think also explaining more to my mom, I'm like, if we had both known like what we know now, I'm like, maybe I could have made one of those other things work, whether it was like the charter school or the online school. I think I was already so done with just the traditional public school. I'm not sure if I would have made it through that, but like one of those alternative schools, I think I might have been able to go through and complete high school. But instead of jumping around quite so much, but it ended up working out.
Yeah. I love that you're calling that out, because I mean, just me hearing it, as I shared with you as a parent, and I'm seeing it with my son, I'm like, gosh, if we continue going down this route, it just seems to me like it's going to be a waste of his time and his potential, because he's such a voracious learner, but really hates school, and I don't know. So I'm glad you're speaking to it, because I think like already by hearing your story, like I'm hearing what your mom did for you, and I'm giving myself permission to do something different as I like look forward for my child, and so it's like just already having an impact right here in our conversation, and it's so helpful, because you're speaking to when you're younger, and it sounds to me like you were just very clear, like, this is not working for me, this isn't a route that you wanted to keep investing in that path. And so then you got to finish high school early, and then what happened?
Yeah, so and I'm glad that that's resonating with you a little bit, and I think just kind of knowing what your options are, and like, yeah, also just knowing that like it's not necessarily always a problem with you or your kid. Like sometimes like the way our school system is structured, like just doesn't work very well for everyone, and it really sucks that it just like kills that like natural like love of learning that I think everyone has. So it's a good thing that, you know, we have other options, and
Yeah.
be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never met anyone in a situation like yours. I've just met a few people who like took these alternative routes that were like, I know I wish I would have done the traditional route. Like, who doesn't isn't looking back at it that way? So I guess, so you said when you finished and you were 13, you started community college right away. Was that right? Right.
Yeah, so I started
You were
community.
13, so I imagine you like, didn't have other 13-year-olds with you in community college. And yeah, sorry, go ahead. You're going to talk through that, but that's what stood out in my mind as what was that like?
Yeah, so I think I knew I wanted to like continue on with my education anyways, but since I didn't have all the credits from high school, um, I was like, okay, the next logical step is just, you know, enrolling in our like local community college. And I think just the way that I interacted with people, and then like appearance wise, like I kind of looked the same as I do now. So like no one really knew quite how young I was. Like I would, you know, tell people when it would come up in conversation, and then they was like, oh my gosh, okay. Like how's that possible?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you get a lot of like 15, 16, 17-year olds that are doing dual enrollment, but like, you know, 13, 14, that was a little bit younger. Um, but I think I kind of blended in with, yeah, either those like dual enrollment kids, because we had those at our some of those at our school, or the kids that were like 18 fresh out of high school. The kids now that I'm in, you know, community college, and like as an adult being way older, you're like, oh my gosh, you're babies. Like
Yeah.
I kind of just blended in with all of that.
That makes sense. And it kind of seems to me like, just as I'm hearing you talk about that experience, that you had like a really high level of emotional maturity for that age, because like you're talking about things like self-awareness and future planning and thinking, and like simply not wanting to waste your time on like a video game or, something useless. Like you wanted to be like tapping into your potential. So I'm assuming you had the emotional maturity that I'm assuming that you had at that time kind of bridge some gaps of just age differences, when you were like relating to others.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think in certain times, I mean, internally was kind of a mess, but I was definitely able to like, you know, communicate well enough with other people. And I did have some of those like long-term goals and things. So I just felt like college just was a much better fit for me. It didn't solve everything, but that environment and the social environment and stuff was like much more aligned with where I was at.
Okay. So yeah, just I'm curious because between that phase and the next big life transition that I know you and I have talked about with you was when you had your daughter. But um, was there anything in between that those big transitions that um, just stood out to you as, oh, this was a struggle because I didn't quite know myself, and how I was different.
Oh, well, like almost every other semester, I was dropping my classes, either all of them or some of them.
Yeah.
So I would kind of oscillate between definitely overloading my schedule a little bit and doing really well, getting mostly A's, a couple B's in my classes, to then I think just getting kind of burnt out and just taking on way too much, and just I guess coming to the conclusion that like dropping everything was the way of dealing with that, because one, I didn't want to mess up my GPA, which was kind of worth it. There's definitely some instances where I'm like, I could have kept a couple of those classes. And I think my mom didn't really know what was going on either, or kind of to advise me like, okay, maybe, maybe talk to your teachers, maybe talk to your counselors, maybe drop one or two classes, but not like all your classes. So that happened, but then I'd kind of just get back at it the next semester, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems reasonable because I don't know if
Mhm.
I was in your shoes in that time, if I was thinking semester to semester, I would probably think maybe there's something different this semester. Like maybe I'll get exposed to something different, and that,
And sometimes it would work because
yeah,
I'd then a little bit learn from that. I'd be like, okay, let me take a little bit of a lighter load this semester. And then of course, just having that like that new motivation and push to like start a new class. And like sometimes that would work and that'd be effective. And I'd be like, okay, this is great. And then I'd have the same thing come up again. And I would always have like a logical explanation of
yeah.
like, okay, one of the semesters I was taking, 2 math classes, chemistry, anatomy, and physics. And then I was also participating in like a club. And so I just was like, okay, that I way overloaded myself and ended up dropping everything. And that like kind of made sense to people. But like I knew deep down that like even that course load, like I could have done it. Like if I
Yeah.
had been able to manage my time, like stay consistent, um, and not procrastinate until like halfway through the semester. And I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going to learn all this material halfway through. But I was like, if I had stayed consistent from the beginning, like I could have done it.
Yeah.
But explaining that to people, most people, oh my gosh, that's way too many classes. That makes sense that you had a hard time with that. You just needed to take it a little bit easier. So that was kind of my explanation for that. And then another one of the semesters where I dropped all of my classes, or maybe like past one, was when my grandma, who I grew up with, was like a second parent to me. She was like diagnosed with cancer when she got really sick and passed away like
Oh,
within a year, under a year. And so that was kind of my reasoning there. And obviously
yeah.
that was something that like of course was affecting me emotionally, just kind of having that going on and also not having a lot of that communicated to me of like what was going on. And also feeling really guilty for not like being the one to like call and keep up with that relationship because they had moved away.
Uh,
Had moved away to Oregon, like when around the same time when I was like 13, 14. So I wasn't quite as close with her by then. Um, and so having that going on and everything, like, I mean, again, it kind of made sense to people why they're like, okay, you were having a hard time then. And I'm like, that's true. That did make school and everything harder, but like that wasn't why I
you know,
got behind in
that,
my classes.
that point that you're making, like, I know I can relate to it so much. And I think this is like a little bit of just the struggle with like getting to the root cause, because like you said, you could always find a reason, and when I look at like these past experiences in my life where there was hardship, there was always a reason I could point to, right?
Mhm.
And then so that means, and like you said, then you tried to work with the the logical reason of what that pointed to. And so you're like then trying to work on things and never finding an opportunity to get to like what is the root cause of it, right? Because life's always changing, and then it's like it feels to me like um because I have that same thought process, and I've been thinking a lot about how that thought process kept me from seeing like the true cause of some issues. It's almost like it minimized what might have been at the root issue and just gave me something else to look at and focus at. um so it seems to me like it keeps us on this hamster wheel of like looking in a different direction, because like we'll just, it's like if you look for a reason, you'll probably find one, and be like, well, this is probably it, like, there's just so many different factors going on around us, like, and as someone who's like looking for improvement, is looking for like what could be the factor in it, like I can see that your brain would naturally be like, oh, this could be it, this could be it, and then like keep trying to work with those. And especially with these things that have big impacts on you, like your grandmother's passing, of course, and any normal, like one would be like, of course that would be hard, of course you would drop a semester, you know so I think, yeah, it's such an important call out, because it leads us, I think, astray to the root cause, and that the fact that the pattern is continuing on, regardless of all these different scenarios that are changing around us. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's always going to be things you could point to, because just like as people, like there's
Yeah.
constantly, like you said, things changing. There's always going to be challenges. And so it's really easy to look at that and be like, okay, that's why I was having such a hard time. And sure, that contributed to it. But it was like, okay, there's actually this like underlying piece that I'm just missing.
Yeah. So yeah, take me through life from there. Like I'm yeah, take me through life there. Like you obviously met someone, ended up getting married, like had it start a family. Like take me through more of your life that kind of led to just led to your daughter being born.
Yeah, so after, I mean, just continuing that cycle with school kind of on and off, eventually completing enough credits to like get my AA degree, and still just going through school slowly. I think finally settling just on like a lower course load.
So I'm sorry, Kalista. The blowers and stuff are out here. I'm gonna move to another. I'll just pause it. I'm gonna move.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm so frustrated because there's also, oh my gosh, it's happening over here too. Can we do this? Because it's like that on that side, on this side, there's like nowhere I can go to get away from it. Can we continue this conversation as part of the part 2 reschedule?
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
And hopefully we can just finish it up real quick after that. But I'm just so fascinated by your learning, so I'm gonna just stop recording.
Okay.